This is Dusty Devers on the left. He's an Oklahoma senator. In the center, we've got Joel Webbin, and on the right, Doug Wilson. These guys are Christian nationalists to the core. It's insane, beyond insane. I don't even know how else to describe it. It's just nuts. They had a panel on biblical patriarchy and Christian nationalism. That's what it's called. So I want to listen to this, see what they have to say. Bound to be psychotic, as everything that they say is. While we listen, we're going to play some Pokemon Ultraviolet. It's a ROM hack of Fire Red, where I can catch every single Pokemon. Like, that's really the only difference. And right now, I'm in search of a Chansey. It'll be in the corner. Shouldn't bother you too much if you've never seen it before. It'll just, it'll be in the background. All right, let's listen to what these people have to say.
The Salem witch trials, the charter of Massachusetts expired, and they didn't.
Okay, I don't know what he's about to get into here, but the Salem witch trials are a perfect example of people just being completely full of shit, going on a witch hunt over nothing. These people did nothing. It was, as far as historians can tell, I believe, it was likely the result of bread that had I think it's pronounced ergo on it. It's a type of fungus that forms on rye bread. It's also the basis for LSD. That's how you start. That's like the product you start with to make LSD. Historians of the era, the people who were studying the area, believe that ergo was the result of, or the Salem witch trials were the result of ergo. They believe that somebody baked a cake for somebody else that had ergo in it and made them trip, which led to them believing that they were witches, so on and so forth. And they went on a witch hunt, because there's no proof anybody's a witch. People aren't witches. Witches don't exist. So the witch hunt they went on turned up a whole bunch of people that were 100% innocent. They were completely innocent, and they hung them from a tree or burned them at a stake. That's what witch hunts lead to. Anyway, go on. What about this witch hunt?
The charter of Massachusetts expired, and they didn't have any legal justification for functioning. They sent someone back to England to get the charter renewed, and while he was gone, the Salem witch trials broke out. And it was a local trial in Salem, and it was a hysteria and a bad business. And then when the charter came back, they had a legal government again. The Puritan ministers of Massachusetts applied to the governor to have the witch trials suppressed. Right. So the Puritans suppressed the witch trials is not the headline you've read. Right. There was a lot of legal background that we have forgotten. So when you hear of Christians fighting Christians, sometimes it was all jumbled up with national interests and legal issues, and it was not just what we would have today.
Joel, you said something that I want to see if you can clarify. It sounded like you were trying to wash over some of the distinctions of denominations at this time. I'm not for that. Is that what?
Okay, so he's saying, the guy was saying that we're all Christians and we should all just work together to defeat the scourge of secularism. And Dusty is saying, I'm not for that.
There's just flagrant historical ignorance, because what we are talking about is restoring the Constitution, returning to the way it was.
No. The way it was under the Founding Fathers was a secular constitution, a secular government.
People think that James Madison, they've confused Earl Warren with James Madison.
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about here. James Madison, Earl Warren, whatever. No, the Founding Fathers were secular, right, except for like one.
So the changes that brought about in the mid-20th century that were ushered in was a subversion of the Constitution. It was a subversion of our constitutional way of governing ourselves, which was explicitly Christian. There was a Supreme Court decision in 1892, exquisitely named Holy Trinity versus the United States of America.
Yeah, he mentioned this earlier. Holy Trinity v. the United States. It's complete BS. It had nothing to do with what he's saying. I understand it was just in like the subtext, or it was in like the explanation of their reasoning or whatever. It had nothing to do with calling the United States a Christian nation.
Quick interjection, this won't take long, I promise. I'd appreciate it if you watched to the end of the video, or at least a couple extra seconds, because YouTube bases its algorithm off of watch time. The more watch time a video has, the further the video will go. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I'm selling my book, Understanding Jehovah's Witnesses, 400 pages, and my second book, 100 Questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, which is about 80 pages. And you can find them both there on the website. Audio form, ebook form, whatever. It's about my experiences within the religion and the history of the religion generally. The 100 questions are intended to challenge your religious leader, so I'd appreciate it if you give it a read. Okay, back to the video.
By the way, I'm looking for a Chansey. It'll have a little item attached if I get the right one. Unfortunately, this is not the right Chansey, so I'm going to add one. I have a calculator out. I'm just wondering exactly how many Chanseys I have to burn through. Statistically, it should be 7, but we'll see if that adds up. I've gone as high as like 55 before, so... Yeah, and it wasn't even like a fundamental piece of the case. It was just a judge explaining that this country is made up of majority Christians. He wasn't saying that this country as an institution is Christian rather than secular. But whatever. Okay, go on.
That's on the nose.
Man, they should have just looked at it.
It would be on the nose if it was real. He's making it up. Wait.
That's on the nose.
Man, they should have just looked at it. And I won't go into the setup of the case, but they decided the case rightly. It was a church named...
I won't go into the setup of the case. I wonder why he's not going into the setup of the case. Anybody have any ideas why he's not going into the setup of the case? That's interesting, huh? Had nothing to do with what he's saying.
Named Holy Trinity against the United States. They decided the case rightly, and then Justice Brewer, the Chief Justice, said, and while we're on the subject, let me tell you why America is a Christian nation. This is the majority opinion.
Well, okay. He said, when he said that, he was talking about the majority people in the country, not the government. He's not talking about the government.
In 1892, and that year was closer to the year of my birth than this year today is to my birth, right? It wasn't that long ago. You might say, well, how old are you?
You'd have to do a lot of math to figure that out. Yeah,
well,
so.
1890.
You wouldn't have to do a lot of math. 1892? What's the difference between 1892 and 2024? 130, somewhere in there? 130 divided by 2. Boom. That's roughly how old he is. So he's like 75. See how simple? That's not complex math. Is this the most complex math these guys have ever come across, I'm wondering?
And people say, no, you're destroying democracy. You're destroying the Constitution. By what? Returning to it?
No, you're not returning to it. This is what's fascinating about it, okay? Let me go off on a little tangent here for a second. Throughout history, there have been 2 types of movements primarily that completely upend the government and change its structure entirely. One of them is a dictatorship, and the other is a revolution. And they're not mutually exclusive. You know, revolutions can turn into dictatorships and all that stuff. But let me rephrase. One of them is a fascist government, and one of them is a revolution. Usually, a revolution wants to forget its past. It doesn't like what happened. It doesn't like how people were treated or what was happening for one reason or another. And it wants to erase it all and start from zero. In fact, they'll even go as far as to change their calendar to year 0 to forget their past, to change that dramatically. And what do we have with fascism? People who mythologize the past, who say the past was better, forgetting the fact that, I guess, let's just hypothetically, let's say that these people are talking about the 1950s. That was better, right? Although it wasn't. You know, aside from the fact that black people were still drinking from black and white only water fountains, let's just forget that for a second. The 1950s weren't better. They were inferior to what we have now. We have so much more technology and knowledge and information and everything else. But the fascist wing of society in the United States or in any other state that's, going down a fascist hole, they are remembering the whole thing. They're changing their interpretation of the past to be something completely different than what it actually was, thus bootstrapping it into what they want it to be in essence. We want to go back to a mythical past, and that mythical past involves, not having any immigrants come in over the border, and not having a national debt, and not this and that, blah, blah, blah. None of those things are true. Immigrants are still coming over the borders. There was still a national debt and all this other stuff. It's a fabricated past that doesn't exist, and they're supposedly trying to get back to it. They're bootstrapping a past onto themselves. So they're not talking about a revolution here, FYI. They're talking about a fascist takeover. Quick interjection, this won't take long, I promise. I just want to say I'd appreciate it if you check my Patreon. owenmorgan.com/Patreon to find it. YouTube's algorithm goes up and down, so I can never predict where it's going to be. Having patrons gives me some level of stability. Okay, back to the video.
You're destroying the Constitution by what? Returning to it?
You're not returning to the Constitution. You're hearkening back to a mythical past where, the Constitution was respected at some point or something? As if it's not, respected now, by and large?
Right. So I think it was Madison that talked about our Constitution, if it's not upheld, and there's others who said something similar, but it can become just a parchment barrier. It depends on the will of the people. So
a parchment barrier, what does that mean? Does he mean like a paper barrier, like it's easy to bust through? I assume that's what he's talking about. So I guess he's saying that the Constitution is like a paper wall preventing things from getting through, and it's easy to bust through. Okay.
So if the people are grounded in the Christian tradition, then that parchment barrier is thick. It's meaningful. It matters because the standard matters in the hearts and the minds of the people. But it becomes just a paper, like tissue paper parchment barrier, if the morality of the people has slidden far away from Christian morals. And now
You mean slid. And no, that's inaccurate. The point of a constitution, of the Constitution, like the United States Constitution, is to protect people's degeneracy. They should be allowed to be degenerates if they so choose. They should be allowed to do whatever they want. And that is what the Constitution protects. It prevents anybody from interfering with their lives, their ability to do what they want. And it also protects others from them being able to do whatever they want to other people. That's what the Constitution's for. It is precisely perfect for governing degenerates. That may not be its purpose, but that is the purpose that it serves. People can do whatever they want, live whatever they like, whatever life they want, have whatever they want. Doesn't matter. You can have a harem of 50. How is it? Andrew Tate put it, bitches and hoes. You can have 50 bitches and hoes if you prefer. Now, that's my saying, but that's the sentiment that he gives. You can have as many bitches and hoes as you want, and it doesn't matter.
just have whatever, and we don't have a standard.
John Adams, our second.
No, we do have a standard. And he said John Adams. I know he's about to say some insane religious shit, because John Adams was the only religious nutcase among the founding fathers. He is absolutely terrible. And the letters that he wrote to his wife, Abigail, were psychotic.
We just have whatever, and we don't have a standard.
John Adams, our second president, said, our Constitution presupposes a moral and a religious people.
John Adams, the second president, did say some psychotic shit that I don't agree with. Literally, every other person in the equation was not a psychotic nutcase.
He said, it is wholly unfit for any other. And that's true.
It's not true. We have immigrants. We have people in this country who are different religions, who the government is supposed to protect just as much as Christians.
I think one of the interesting things is, shameless plug coming, that if you look at the spirituality or the cosmology that's starting to rise among our at least in America. They're looking towards spiritual things far more than they have been for years. Right. If you've got Joe Rogan, who's clearly working on psychedelics, and those psychedelics are bringing him closer to a spiritual reality and even him saying, we need Jesus, and not saying that really tongue-in-cheek. He's leading in and saying, we need Jesus. And you've got...
Like, even if he doesn't believe in him, he's like, somebody needs Jesus.
Yeah.
Maybe not me, but you need Jesus.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson, even Graham Hancock, talking so much about the spiritual. I think what you're...
I don't know who Graham Hancock is, but I guarantee he's a complete nutcase. I would have thought for sure these people would view mushrooms as like a portal to demonism or something.
Seeing with the popularity of podcasts and that are really talking about this, we're horseshoeing. You know, we're going back to this pharmakeia and really.
Pharmakeia, by the way, is the name of the demon that inhabits people who need medicine. So you got high blood pressure, you got to take medicine for high blood pressure. You're inhabited by the demon of pharmakeia, and if you were exorcised of that demon, then you wouldn't need it anymore. How many chances have I hit? Probably 4, right? I'm up to 4 chances, give or take. Okay.
We're horseshoeing. You know, we're going back to this pharmakeia and really tapping into the spiritual nature. And I think that's why Haunted Cosmos has become
I was going to say, somebody's been listening to Haunted Cosmos.
Yeah. Cosmos. Thanks.
He corrected our pronunciation based on the Greek, but I said it's the same reason I don't walk into a restaurant and say, I would like an extra tortilla with my burrito. So I mean,
You actually do say that, though.
At Chili's.
Is he making fun of like a Mexican accent or a Spanish accent? I don't understand what the joke is.
Says it at Chili's.
Chili's.
He doesn't even go to the taqueria. He goes to
Is he making fun of people right now? It sounds like that's what's happening.
Chili's and says that. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, intelligent guy, great restaurant.
Did all you guys read Age of Entitlement, Christopher Caldwell?
Yeah.
Yep. Who's read in the audience? Who's read Christopher Caldwell, Age of Entitlement? Raise your hand. I'm just curious how many. I'd highly recommend it. I think it's really helpful. His point, and I think that it's the point that I would make and a lot of other guys would make, is it's not that, oh, the Constitution is terrible. The Constitution's wonderful. It'd be great if we still had it.
Yeah.
Is he saying we don't have a constitution anymore?
That's his argument, is just, and how do you get rid of something like, because it's, you know, it's just too obvious. Nobody's it'll never work to just, you know, unless you're Nicolas Cage, nobody can just take, you know, the Constitution and make it disappear. But
yeah, but he had to give it back, Joel.
Right.
Dude, Nicolas Cage is such a hard ass, right? Something I've noticed about Reddit is that Neo from The Matrix, what's his name? He is the most loved human being on Reddit, aside from maybe Rick Astley. And I would say Neo is even more loved. Keanu Reeves? Why isn't Nicolas Cage loved that much? That dude is something else. And Brendan Fraser. Those people are just, they're the best. Sorry, just a little aside there.
Yeah, right. But this is what you can do. What if, instead of getting rid of the Constitution, or what if you could take a lens, a particular, a way of interpreting, and you don't get rid of the Constitution, but you put a lens over the Constitution that becomes the de facto Constitution.
So he's saying, look at the Constitution through a godly lens, and it will tell you what you need to know about it, basically. Except for the fact that the Constitution is good just as it is. And God's word should only apply to God's word and to Christians and Christianity. If you want God's word to apply to you, become Christian, in my mind. He's trying to impose it on everybody from here to Texas.
To where, for all intents and purposes, functionally, you now have another binding document.
When I was reading that book,
that's his argument.
Age of Entitlement, he was throwing hand grenades every direction. And I was reading this and I looked at the spine. who published this?
I know, it's pretty bold.
Well, Claremont. And I thought, what's going on over there? And this is another harbinger of there are people are saying out loud things that they never would have said out loud 40 years ago. And we're able to talk.
Like what? What things are they saying out loud that they wouldn't say 40 years ago? You're trying to tell me that this mythical past that you're trying to get to didn't actually exist and that you're trying to fabricate it as we speak? That's what it sounds like he's saying right now.
To this, if we'd been talking like this in the 70s, there would have been 20 of you. Right. This is a very different time.
It's a different time as in there are more religious people? Dude, I love everything about it. He's just completely contradicting everything that religious leaders say on a regular basis.
I do wonder, to your original question, like the people there's some discomfort. You
I
seem
didn't
not
remember what it was.
to worship our sacred democracy. And I do think there is at least a portion of the Christian nationalist conversation that is willing to say, maybe we're too pluralistic from the foundation, even from the beginning. Maybe there's a little bit too much enlightenment. Maybe there's a little bit too much sprinkled in of that. Even
FYI, the Enlightenment, what he's referring to here, was a period of time in history, human history, that was spearheaded by Thomas Jefferson largely, of logic and reason and rationality and thought, honest, critical thought. And the Age of Enlightenment brought about the first large-scale secular democracy, which is the United States. He decided to try this as the experiment, the great experiment, you know? Always talk about America as the big experiment because it was secular. It's the first time in a long time, ever maybe. So these people are talking about the Age of Enlightenment, the moment when we accepted that we don't know everything and we need to learn and understand and build on this information and grow and make a government that accepts that growth, okay?
maybe we're too pluralistic from the foundation, even from the beginning. Maybe there's a little bit too much enlightenment. Maybe there's a little bit too much sprinkled in of that. Even as much, and the upgrade from today to the original thing would be, miles and miles better. But I do think that there is a willingness, and maybe that's where some of this pushback comes with as well, for people to say, yeah, but maybe there was a little bit too much deism, and maybe there was a little bit, not to gloss over all the disagreements, and maybe we do want to say that there is first table of the law type of stuff. Not that there wasn't a lot of that going on, but is that part of this?
So yes, there were deistic currents, but Jefferson and Franklin were probably the only founding fathers who were toying with deism. And
no, there were plenty of founding fathers that were deists. They weren't toying with it. They were deists. They didn't believe that God created everything. That's deism. Voltaire was an atheist, a full-blown atheist around the time, which wasn't very common because we didn't understand how humanity could have come to be without having been created. It's too incredible. Then we realized. Then we found out. We drew all the we drew the line between the dots and figured it out. They weren't toying with deism.
And they were both very bad deists because they believed that God intervened in human affairs, but they were liberals and affected by...
Yeah, I don't know that they believed that. Thomas Jefferson famously wrote the Jefferson Bible, which is where he cut out all the magical shit from Jesus' teachings, and he's left with just the moral precepts and said that, these are pretty decent moral precepts. We'll take these. Honestly, there are moral precepts that exist in every culture, and you shouldn't look for a book for your holy or your moral precepts. You should find your moral precepts inside yourself. What do you think the best thing is to do? What do you think the moral action would be in these situations? We have a trolley, and it's on a track, and if you pull this lever, the trolley changes lanes from going to the right, it'll switch to the left. And on the left side, we have 5 dogs tied up, and they're going to die if you flip it. And on the right side, we have 5 human beings tied up. And if you don't flip it, or if you just leave it alone, then they're going to die. So the moral decision is up to you. Who do you save? Dogs or humans? You know, that kind of thing. Really, the trolley problem is presented with 1 human and 5 humans, but the vegan version is dogs and humans. Surprisingly, a high number of people would choose to kill the humans instead of the dogs, but that's neither here nor there.
They believed that God intervened in human affairs, but they were liberals and affected by...
Like, these people were really interested in philosophy and morality generally, and recognized that everybody coming to the United States was likely going to have a different kind of morality, different setup. Some would kill the dogs, some would kill the humans. Some would walk away from the problem completely and wash their hands of it and say, if I don't touch the lever at all, this isn't my doing. Whoever set it up this way in the first place is at fault. The moment I touch the lever, it's on me. That's kind of the Kantian way of viewing it, I believe. Lots of different moral precepts like this.
The Enlightenment. But at the Constitutional Convention, there were 55 men there, and 50 of the 55 were Orthodox Trinitarian Christians. And Jefferson was in France at the time, and basically it was overwhelmingly Christian with currents here and there. I'd recommend, if you want real bracing reads, go back and read the early Rushdoony, This Independent Republic, which I've been going back and reading him again.
I don't know what he's talking about right now, but okay.
And, I just finished This Independent Republic again. It's a really bracing read, and he pinpoints the areas where there was compromise, where the founders left a few doors unlocked. That you left some.
It's true, they did. They left a few doors unlocked. The founders did. One of the most notable doors that they left unlocked, one of the ways in which they wrote the Constitution so that it could be changed when it needed to be, when the time came. One of the ways they did that was by leaving the door open for slavery so that it could be abolished. Thomas Jefferson knew slavery should and would eventually be abolished. It was only a matter of time. And it was written in such a way that it wouldn't disrupt the rest of the Constitution if it was put in there in the Bill of Rights, no slavery, basically. It would cause mass disruption to society, of course, because it was based on slavery. But the whole system wouldn't come crashing down if we, added this one little change here. So yeah, they left the door open a little bit for certain things. Go on.
Doors unlocked in a bad neighborhood. It's that level of...
Yep. Great. All right. Thank you guys for serving us this evening and all day. And we look forward to tomorrow. I know some of you guys, you brought your kids with you. God bless you. Thank you for bringing them and making it a family affair. And so some of you are probably going to have to head out. But real quick, before some of you dismiss, and then as many of you who want, stay for the after party, we do have one more sponsor that I want to make sure to get to. So this is Nate from the Ezra Institute. And you guys, we're free to go ahead and exit stage left or right.
Okay, I guess that's the end of it. Wow, that was a wild panel that we listened to. This is like the far-right Christian evangelical version of the red pill community, who's obsessed with the idea that women are inferior and they should blah, 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 whatever. Not the first time I've heard absolute nutcases espouse this kind of thing on the right, or in the religious sphere either.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there they go. Check this one out. Johnny Enlow's even talked about this. Bizarrely. Yeah, here you go. The Christian community has picked up on the red pill. Dude on the right, that's Johnny Enlow. He's a far-right nutcase, an evangelical extremist, a Trump lover, believes that Trump was sent by God and all kinds of crazy stuff. Listen to what he says about the red pill here.
And so there's been this progressive transition into a red pill world where you become progressively informed on what's going on.
Is that what he thinks red pill is?
And then you realize your prophetic words there. It's amazing how God can still make them valuable in work, but then you realize certain aspects, certain details you were concerned about when you were seeing from a red pill perspective, really not that relevant once you're in the red pill reality. He's in the position of more power.
The red pill reality. When he says red pill reality, he means absolute psychosis.
Than the man sitting there as Biden.
Wow. Okay, now wait a minute. Say that again to make sure anyone didn't miss that statement, because that's like off the chart.
Oh, President Trump is in a world position of immense more power than that man that sits there as President Biden.
Wow.
And not just
wow, he says,
theoretically, symbolically, in spirit, because in the spirit, he is for sure. If you are able to see from heaven's perspective, he is the man of primary governmental authority on planet.
As Johnny Enlow is, of course, he's capable of seeing from the spirit.
Earth. And so I don't know if people understand that. That hasn't changed. But then again, when you're in a limited perspective role of being able to see what's going on, you're getting nervous about if he's in that seat soon enough. But then when you realize this is a global assignment and mission, and there are global priorities that you never even saw before, then you realize, wow, this really does need to unfold at the pace that God wants it to unfold in ways he wants to make it happen.
So anyway, yeah, that's Johnny Enlow. That's his absolute psychosis, and that's the red pill community. It's just shameless and bizarre and disturbing and weird. Let me know what you think about it in the comments.